Welcome to MMA Round Up with your host, Randy Silver. Today we have a quick episode for you. Your UFC 295 main event changes. Jones versus Miocic is no longer happening. Jones tore a pec muscle. We're going to show you the video and talk about it. As a result, Jiri versus Alex, the light heavyweight title, is now the main event at UFC 295, Madison Square Garden in New York. And Pavlovich versus Aspinall is now going for the interim heavyweight title, will be the co-main event. We're going to preview that fight for you and talk about all the fights in general. Let's dive into it. The first thing you have to talk about is this is the second card in a row. The main event got lost in the first UFC 294. Islam Charles did not happen because Charles hurt his eye a week before the fight. At least this time they have 2-3 weeks before the fight. So Islam fought Volk. We know that Islam knocked out Volk in the first round with a head kick. In the co-main event, Chimaev did not fight Costa. Costa had staph on his elbow, so he fought Usman, again on 10 days notice, and Chimaev won that by majority decision. So that takes us back to this fight, UFC 295, main event breakdown. Hopefully we don't lose the co-main event, Jiri versus Pereira. It's already interim because the champion right now, unfortunately, tore his Achilles tendon. So now this opened up. How did the champion right now get it? Jamahal Hill, because Jiri won the title off of Teixeira, and then he got shoulder surgery during training, hurt it pretty bad, so he was out. Now he's back to fighting a year later against Alex, who's moving up from from the 185 division, where he was champion, lost his belt to Izzy, who had won it from Izzy, and now is trying to become a 2-division champion. Storylines galore. So let's preview this fight for you really quickly and dive into it. Actually, first, you know what we're going to do? We're going to show you the announcement Dana White had. So dive into it.
Everybody, here we are again. You know, John Jones was training last night, got injured. He was wrestling, and he tore the tendon that connects your pec to the bone, off the bone. 8 months, gonna need surgery. He's out. So the main event is Prochazka versus Pereira. The co-main event now is Pavlovich versus Aspinall for the interim heavyweight championship.
Okay, so now you get the sense of it. What makes this fight so appealing? Let's show you quickly. First off, big boys, heavyweight division. Pavlovich is 18-1, coming from Russia. Aspinall, coming from England, is 13-3, so both have minimal losses in the record. Now are going to be fighting in the mecca of the sporting world, New York, in Madison Square Garden. Pavlovich is 31, while Aspinall is 30. Has a longer reach, does Sergi at 34 inches to Tom Aspinall 78 inches. Southpaw versus Orthodox. When we look at the full profile, people have been clamoring for Pavlovich to get a title shot lately. When we look at his last records, you can see that. Since April 20th, 4/20, 2019, against Marcelo Golem, KO, TKO win, ×2, ×3, ×4, ×5, ×6. Whew! That's called working your way up to a title fight, and it's deserved. And who's he bought? Some of the biggest names in the heavyweight division, his last 3 fights. Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa, Curtis Blades. He beat Maurice Green, who trains with John Jones as well. Before he came over, he was an F&G fight organization, was champion, and then they brought him over to the UFC. You can see he has 1 loss in his career, and that was against Alistair Overeem when he first came into the UFC, and has been on the run since. So now he comes in, and he's fighting Tom Aspinall, who himself is on a good streak. You may recognize his name. He's been headlining all the UFC England cards as of late. He actually tore his ACL in a fight, so you'll see right here. Against Curtis Blades, KO, TKO loss. This was because he went for a kick, tore his knee up, unfortunately, had to go down, and the fight ended. So they called that a loss for him. He got surgery. That was 2022. He came back literally July 23rd was that fight. He came back July 22nd, 2023, a year later, and got a pretty convincing win against Marine Tubera. And now he's going to be fighting for an interim title. People have been saying he's been building up this for a while. Before he got hurt, he had not lost a fight in the UFC, and most of them, all of them were by TKO, KO, submission. No decisions out here. His last loss was illegal elbow. He got submitted 1 time in his career, so he has been on a tear. he's a future champion probably. He gets his first crack at the belt here. He's 13-3, and it's well deserved. You would think the winner of this will fight against Jon Jones or Stipe, but you may be mistaken. I'll tell you why. This article talks about it well. First off, Jones' injury. He tore a ligament in his chest. He told him a muscle in his chest, something like that. Surgery, out 8 to 10 months, unfortunately. And obviously that means he's got to retrain, everything like that. So we'll see if he comes back. Stipe, why is he not fighting for the title? One, it's not the money fight he was expecting. It's not the biggest name. Two, he does not need to fight for money. He's a firefighter. He's made plenty of money in his career. He is trying to fight for legacy here. So Jon Jones' legacy, one of the best, if not the best light heavyweight of all time, if not the best UFC fight of all time. He beats him. Check mark. Does that make him? Well, he's also saying he's the best heavyweight of all time. So, retain his throne versus Jon Jones, who's now champ, where Stipe has never been champ. And then third, what's he get by winning a title again at 41 years old? Doesn't mean a lot. He's got to fight more if he wins the title. So if it's not Jon Jones, not that big money fight, then probably not worth it. However, with Jones and Miocic, now it's going to be Pavlovich, Aspinall. You get two young up-and-comers, young in terms of first time in title fights, 30, 31 years old, hungry. The crowd, big Russian crowd in New York, but a lot of Brits travel well. A lot of Brits just live in New York as well. Should help the fight. In your international fight, you have Jiri, who's I think is Polish, Eastern European, and you have Alex, who's Brazilian. So at the biggest mecca of any sporting venue in the U.S., Madison Square Garden, your four fighters in the main events, co-main events, are not American. Very interesting fact. Something to take a look at as well. So then, what's the main event of this card? You have Jiri versus Alex. Alex is trying to come up from middleweight to become a 2-division champion. There's only been, I think, a dozen in the UFC career, while Jiri's trying to become light heavyweight champion again. Technically, he's linear champion. He never lost the belt, never got a chance to defend it, because after he won the belt, hurt himself in training and had to get stripped of the belt, which went to Jemiah Hill. And Hill, unfortunately, lost the belt because he got hurt as well. Never got to defend it. This should be a really fun fight. When we look here, full profile. Jiri won against Teixeira at that amazing fight in Singapore. It was declared fight of the year. Maybe it was the best light heavyweight fight ever. It was a good one. Go take a look at it. And he has a record of 29-3-1 against Alex, who is just as much of a dog as well. I mean, Alex's UFC career or MMA career is not as long. We know what he did in kickboxing. We know his fights against Izzy. So all that goes into it. He walks around 225, so it's probably easy for him to fight 205. Here he fought once against Jan, won that fight after losing the first round, won the next two. Second fight, 225, we'll see how much more comfortable he is, if this will be striking or a ground game. Let's just show the rest of the card while we're here. Your third fight is Diego Lopez versus Pat Sabatoni. Jessica Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern. This is a big fight in the women's strawweight. Whoever wins this fight may be up for a title or a number one contender match after. Starting your card, you have Matt Fareva versus Benoit St. Denis. In your prelims, Matt Schnell, Steve Urich, Tabitha Ricci, Lupi Gordanias, Nazim Sadikov versus Vyacheslav Borchachev, Maturis Repicki versus Nobro Eliv. And then in the prelims, Jared Gordon, unfortunately, is on the early prelim, which I don't agree with. I think he should be higher up. I think he's a bigger name. And you see that the rest of the fights here. For being in New York, not a big American card. You see some on the prelims. Here on the early prelims, no Americans. And then, of course, on the main card, you have one American, two Americans that I see. So, big international card. Usually they keep those for international fights. Not here in Madison Square Garden. They're pulling out all the stops. One other thing to note as well, Bud Light is now the new beer sponsor of the UFC. It's been Modelo for years and years and years. People love Modelo. Modelo, all the commercials. Bud Light had the huge issue for them that came from supporting the transgender influencer Devin Mullaney. I want to say that's the individual's name. Excuse me if that's wrong. Long story short, Bud Light sponsored this person, promoted them in commercial. They got a huge backlash from their following, from people. They felt it was off-brand for Bud Light, and that's not my place to say, just reporting the facts. They lost a bunch of customers. They went from number 1 beer to number 2 in the U.S. Modelo went to number 1. How's Bud Light trying to get back? They've been trying different PR campaigns, whatnot. Well, they got the biggest campaign of all, putting all their eggs in this basket, signed with the UFC, pay them the biggest sponsorship deal ever in UFC's history. And with that, they will be all over the ring, commercials, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you get yourself back in with the crowd that you're always had and expecting? Sign with the MMA organization, UFC, paying a bunch of money to go back and get the market share and get their customers back. I'm sure in due time, people will go back to Bud Light. People always forget things. However, they're having to pay a pretty penny to pay the UFC to become their number 1 sponsor again, and that is sponsoring them in beer starting January 1st, 2024. So that is your UFC 295 main event changes. Comment your thoughts. Obviously, you're going to be disappointed not to see 2 GOATs of MMA, 2 GOATs of UFC fighting. What do you think of the co-main event, Pavlovich versus Aspinall? Do you think Jiri versus Alex deserves to be the main event? Anything else? Could they put another fight in here to help out? Love to hear it. Of course, stay around here, MMA Roundup on Red and Silver TV. We continue to give you all the hard-hitting facts and breaking down all the biggest news from UFC for you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.